Hello and welcome to this episode of Hampton Roads Business Live. My name is Rory Graham, and today I have the pleasure of having with us Amy Volk from Simplified Living. And that's something I think all of us could want a little more of, is simplified living.
Absolutely.
Welcome here.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about what is Simplified Living. Give us an overview.
So in a nutshell, we're a residential and corporate professional organizing company. And what that really means is that we do everything from help people organize a closet to a whole house and anything in between, small, large. And then on the corporate side, we help companies do physical organizing like files and set up offices and things like that. But we also help them with some process improvement and making things flow better in their offices.
Okay, and let's talk about one at a time then. Let's just start with the residential type services. Now, when you do residential services, I guess someone calls you, and can you walk us through a process of what you would do?
Sure. So typically a client will call looking for organizing services. They may just want, a kitchen, help redoing their kitchen. A lot of times we'll go in and we start with an assessment on every single client. So I come from a nursing background. That was my first part of my life, was nursing. And so I really set it up based on that process of diagnosing really what's the underlying problem, how did things get disorganized, and why do they stay disorganized, and helping people figure that out. I really want to get to the why of why people are living in clutter or chaos like that. So if they're calling something for like a kitchen, and I'll go in and do an assessment, I'll start with the kitchen, but I look at the whole house in context, because one thing leads to another, and as you start moving stuff around, we often have to relocate it somewhere else. So I go in and do the assessment, and then it'll help.
Including the trash can.
Including the trash can, exactly. And that will help me determine, what does the client need? Do they need a small team here? Do they just need one person here? How many days will this take? What's the manpower, and what are the other resources? Do they need a handyman? Do they need some things built out or fixed? And so that helps me determine all that they'll need. And then I can say, hey, here are your choices based on your budget, based on your time frame. Here's all your choices. And then we come in and redo the kitchen. And a lot of times, clients will say, you know what, now that you've redone the kitchen, will you come back and redo the living room or our closets or other parts of the house? So often we do more than one in that single house.
And they work with you in this process?
Yeah, 99% of the time, we want the client to work with us. There's been a few occasions where, and especially in some military families, where they just can't be present and we just come in and do it. But if they're part of it, it really helps them then, because we're going to leave in 3 or 4 days and they are going to have to live with the end result. We want them to be part of that end result so that they can live better, they know how to function, they know when they're looking at a piece of paper, where does it go, what did they tell me to do with it, how do I decide what to keep and throw away as more stuff comes in my house. So yeah, we really like them to be a part of the process.
Why don't you give us an example of a residential job you've done recently?
Okay, so we'll go back to the kitchen. This is a gal who we had done a home office for before. We went back, she called us, I need my kitchen redone. It's a large kitchen, space was not the problem. But this happens a lot, Rory. People will move into a house and the initial setup, they'll put stuff where they think it makes sense, and then you just get busy living, and the way that you set it up or the way that it's functioning doesn't really actually work for a family. And so in this case, they didn't have a true pantry, so food was stuck in multiple cabinets, and you forget what you have, especially if it's a high cabinet and food's way at the back. And the way that how they used their kitchen, she did a lot of baking, and yet the baking stuff was all shoved under a cabinet in the corner. So we pulled literally every single thing out, food, baking dish, pans, spices, and tossed out any food that was expired or bad. That was the first start.
That's a good move.
And then we consolidated all the food. I often see people live fragmented, I called it, so they'll have a little bit of this and a little bit of that in all these different places. So we pulled all of her food together and made like a food center, and then we were able to make a whole baking center. So we took all of her baking stuff and moved it to one area so she can stand there and bake and not have to run all around the kitchen. And we did the same. We created then a little breakfast area. Her kids can make breakfast really easy, and relocated spices and all that, so that when they get in the kitchen, it makes much more sense and the flow of it is better. So from putting the dishes away in the dishwasher to making a meal, it flows much better.
Well, I think I think most of us just tend to gather things.
Yeah.
I was telling my wife the other day, we were talking, and we're sitting in our den, and my home is 3,600 square feet.
That's a good size.
And it's all one level, so it's kind of spread out. And we were sitting in the den, and I said, "You realize when we got married, that we lived in a trailer in the 70s, about 35 years ago." And I said, the trailer was not as big as this den. You
Wow.
know, so I mean, because it was a small trailer. It was 44 feet, I think.
Wow.
And I said, I said, and we've got this house, but it's packed. I mean, it's got so much junk.
Right.
So it's amazing what you collect over the years.
It totally is. And a lot of times people will say to me, "I just need a bigger house."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Need more space.
Yeah.
And I always say, you don't need more space, you need less stuff.
Yeah, because you'll grow into the big space.
You totally will fill up any capacity that you have.
Right.
And that your house is a great example. So
I guess that's human nature.
it is human nature, and especially if you live there for any length of time. Like if I tell clients, if you lived in your house 5 or more years, you have stuff you don't need. Because if you have a place to stick it, you do, and then you forget about it. Or a lot of times I'll hear, well, I keep things just in case I'll need them for later. Crafters do this a lot, or people who are really creative. People who are thrifty and think, oh, I'm going to save that part. I see clients do this a lot. They save parts of motors or parts of things that they think they can use to fix something else. But at the end of 5 or 6 years, you have all this stuff sitting around that you're not using.
Well, when I fix things, I always have parts left over.
Right. And you think you're gonna
So I save them just
Yeah.
in case I figure out what they were.
exactly, because you don't want to throw it out and then need it. That's what people always think.
Well, let's move to the corporate area.
Okay.
Okay. I found this pretty fascinating. Okay, so on the corporate side of things, you go through a process as well.
Right.
And let's talk about some of the services that you provide to the corporate client.
Okay.
Typical services. So one of them would be, you talked to me about, was going from paper to digital.
Right. So that was a neat situation, and we've done this a couple of times. Businesses, especially smaller businesses, start out, with resources. In the beginning, you're doing everything yourself, and then the advent of the digital age. So like this particular company started out when there weren't computer systems, not like we know them now, and they were wanting to convert to a online cloud-based software. They needed a couple of things. They needed organizing in terms, because they needed to know how to collect all their files that they had, and then how was that going to be organized to get transferred into a cloud-based software. They also wanted some help deciding on the cloud-based software based on organizing and use and kind of how easy is it for staff to use. So I helped them with that process, and then we physically helped them scan and transfer all of their files, and then we uploaded it and organized each client file digitally from this paper file.
Right.
That was a long process, but
Yeah, it is a massive process.
and it's slow, but at the end they had a whole all digital system, and every file was organized exactly how they wanted it to be organized. So that was a really cool project and made a huge difference for them.
Right. Okay. Well, that's also helps. You also help clients with once you do that type of service, whatever. Then you can help them put together a process where they keep it updated. They keep it.
Yeah, and a lot of times what I'll see is, again, small businesses, I see this more often, is they don't establish procedures for how things get done. So for instance, there might be an administrative assistant who handles all the mail, faxes, all of that stuff, but there's no written process for when the mail comes in, what is the process for how we handle it, and date stamp it and log it. Same with faxes. And what I try and really get people to see is, if you would die, could someone step in behind you, or could you hire someone new and they would know exactly where to take over? And if the procedures in your practices aren't that clear, aren't so clear that someone could just take over, then you need to really revisit them.
Do you establish a written procedure?
We do help them establish a written procedure,
'Cause
a
that way
step by
you could-
step.
That way, when you have an employee leave or something,
Right.
you can have someone else can step right in with the same procedure.
Yeah, and I really learned this when I was a Navy officer. I was in charge a lot of times of doing manuals, procedure manuals. So it really helped me see the value of, you have to be able to train somebody. We're all going to move or die or get other jobs, and the next person has to step in and take over that new job. You have to have those things in place
Right.
to be
Okay.
able to train someone.
Do you ever see clients, corporate or otherwise, as you walk in and you look at it, you go, "No way, I'm not doing this." I mean,
Yeah, sometimes it can feel a little daunting because there's so many, especially in the corporate side, there's so many components. There's staff and there's vendors and there's, inventory and all this stuff. And so you look at it, and there have been a couple clients where you just, they want help, but they don't really want to change. And so
Yeah.
I can't help anyone who doesn't want to
and you-
actually change.
Don't you have to kind of see how they work or
Mm-hmm.
how their business functions, they get an understanding of that business a bit, so you know how to work
Yeah,
within their world?
Absolutely. And the corporate assessment is very, very detailed with questions like that. Like how does this happen from A to Z? How does this happen in your office? Who does what? And really list the responsibilities of all the people in the office, and including the owner. What is the owner's responsibilities? And a lot of times in small business, the owner holds on to too many responsibilities.
Well, that's true.
And they don't delegate when they really need to. And a question I ask corporate folks all the time is, what is your highest and best use? What is the thing, the 2, 3, 4 things that only you can do that nobody else can do? You can't delegate those things. And then those are the things that they should be really focusing on, and everything else that they can should be delegated.
Right. It's hard to turn loose.
It totally is
It
hard.
really is, if it's your baby, and
Yes.
so I totally agree with that. All right, so you've been in business 8 years.
Right.
And you work on the south side.
We do.
Right, okay. And you've got a staff.
I have 2 organizers, regular staff organizers. So in a project, we may need just one person, one organizer to go in. But on house projects, we have a minimum of 2 organizers on site. And if we're doing a whole house or a big project in a house, we'll have 3 organizers on site.
Okay,
So including myself.
all right, okay. And you have packages available for both residential and corporate.
Right. So we do as small as a 3-hour package. We tell people anything less than 3 hours, you really can't accomplish much of anything. But 3 hours sometimes is all it takes to help someone set up a file system or do a small closet. All the way up to 4 days, we can do an average, like a 3,600 square foot house that you talked about. We can do an organizing project with a staff of 3 in 4 days. We can do a whole house. So and everything in between, 3 hours up to 4 days. And then we also have a maintenance package. So a lot of times people say, okay, you came and you did that.
If you saw the room above my home office, you'd need that medical training.
You know, have a heart attack.
You have a heart attack. So,
I have seen those kind of rooms too.
so anyway, boy, my wife's not going to want to see this interview.
Yeah, a lot of people are
It's not all
collectors.
her either. It's me too. I'm just as guilty. So.
And if you're a collector or you like vintage things, that seems to, the collections seem to really hamper people and take up whole rooms. I see a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, or hobbies.
Hobbies.
I know. I've got a closet that's all magic stuff. I used to do magic.
Okay.
Magician in the early '80s, and I had this huge collection of stuff. Some of it's got it's a little value to it, but most of it's just from memories or I think one day I might get back into doing that or do something. I'm not going to do that, but
Right.
I can't throw it away.
Right.
And it's hard to just get rid of it. So anyway, I totally understand where you're coming from. So, when I first called you, I was thinking, I just couldn't get my head around this business.
Right.
From just the brief mention I had that I knew of it. But after speaking to you, I can see where both corporate and residential clients could really benefit from it.
Yeah,
You offer something very valuable there.
Yeah, and I think where people feel frustrated is they don't want to live in a cluttered house or in a cluttered business, but they don't know what to do about it. It doesn't seem natural. They don't have a solution. And so we come in and really try and make things really clear for them. And I would say most clients get stuck when trying to get organized is in the decision-making process, like how do I decide what to keep of that magic stuff in my closet? How do I decide how to delegate jobs with my staff? And so we really help them sort of, it seems cliche, but cut through the clutter of all the layers of stuff and make a decision about, this one decision will help you move forward. It'll get some of the clutter out. It'll make things more clear for you.
And do you find that people will follow through with what you set up?
Yeah, and this is what I say to clients all the time, if you call me back in 6 months for the same problem, we have not done our job well. So we really leave a client, we teach them how to function in this space that's newly organized. We want it to be easy to live in or to work in. And so I think everyone's going to have a little bit of clutter all the time. Even I have a small pile in my kitchen, but it should just be stuff that I can put away and clean up very, very easily. Beyond that, if I have to come back for the same reason, we haven't done our job well. So I want people to really understand how to function in their new space, and we really teach that at the end of a project.
Okay, well, I know your busy season's coming up with the holidays, and then the first of the year is big, I'm sure. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to?
Well, so you mentioned the holidays. One thing I've really tried to hammer it in people is between now and Thanksgiving, between now and when the holidays hit us, try and donate one bag from every closet of, stuff I haven't wore in a year, stuff I haven't touched, stuff that's too small, stuff I don't like. Just really one bag, one grocery sack per closet will make a big difference for the holidays. And then, because we're all going to get stuff, influx into our house, new stuff over the holidays. And there's always stuff we're buying too. So just get rid of one bag for every closet is a good guideline I tell people for this time of the year. Good start.
That's a good start.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have a house or a business or just clutter, then you need a little bit of organization. Holidays are coming. First of the year, of course, is coming. But any time of year is good for getting rid of stuff, getting rid of the old to make room for the new, and also just making your lives function a little better. You might want to give Amy a call at Simplified Living. Her contact information is at the end of this video and also on this page. And we thank you for coming in and being our guest today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you and for coming. And I wish you a great deal of success. Sounds like you're on your way anyway.
Yeah, it's a fun business.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.